It may be human nature to wonder if other intelligent life exists in the universe, or perhaps other dimensions. Within 54 light years of Earth in our own galaxy, there are at least 1,000 stars, 46 of which are similar to the Sun in that planets orbit them. Scientists say it is feasible to have life on at least 1 out of 22 of these planets. If this is so, the question is, are we being visited by extraterrestrials? Well, the United States government officially says no, even though they outline UFO history and hazards in their official Field Guide to Disaster Control. Internal requests by Congress to release information pertaining to incidents that have happened decades ago, such as the famous UFO retrieval of Roswell, New Mexico, have continually been denied.
The Air Force put out a new report that said, indeed, this wasn't the weather balloon that we've said it was. It was something called Project Mogul, which was supposed to be a high-altitude, low-frequency listening device suspended by balloons in the upper atmosphere designed to detect possible Soviet nuclear testing, which, of course, wouldn't actually it wouldn't happen for 2 more years and would theoretically take us by surprise at that point. One particularly interesting note was that a lot of files have been destroyed, evidently some decades ago, without the proper paper trail that would document where they went.
Additional evidence to a government cover-up at Roswell was discovered during a research project at Curlin Air Force Base by award-winning filmmaker and author Linda Howe.
Our government was retrieving what was described in this alleged government document. They were retrieving crashed discs and non-human entities, both alive and dead, prior to July of 1947 in the now famous Roswell incident. That would mean that the Truman administration already knew about discs and non-human entities before the crash between Corona and Roswell. And it may also be why that there was a leak, but they were prepared to handle the leak with the weather balloon story.
The issue of the government cover-up policy, and the reason why it's so damaging, is because the government, by saying UFOs don't exist and therefore abductions don't exist, they're telling every single person who's had this experience, you didn't have this experience. The official policy is you didn't have it. You're either a liar or you're somehow mentally deranged. You didn't have this experience. That's the effect of the government policy. That's the effect of the damage that it does to human beings, because obviously that official policy then filters down to psychiatrists, school counselors, rabbis, priests, you name it, all of whom are equipped to say officially, based on what the government has said, you didn't have this experience. You had something else. You're either lying or you're mentally ill.
The explanation still given to many is that these sightings are man-made objects, perhaps even military. Veteran pilot and forensic scientist David Rudd explains the results of a 7-second close encounter with a bright yellow cylindrical-shaped object traveling at an estimated speed of over 5,000 miles per hour.
Would have been going down at about 5,200 miles an hour, and to go to straight and level, the delta V right there at the point where it went from a down angle to straight and level would have subjected that to about 237 Gs, which is pretty substantial for anything to go like that. Human body will black out at about 8 or 9 Gs, the standard person will. So
John Mack, MD, is professor of psychiatry at the Cambridge Hospital, Harvard Medical School, and founding director of the Center for Psychology and Social Change. Winner of the Pulitzer Prize, Dr. Mack is a groundbreaking pioneer of abduction research and is author of the recent best-selling book, Abduction: Human Encounters with Aliens.
There's not a bit of evidence that any of these craft are man-made. They don't behave like aircraft or missiles that have been constructed by human beings. They don't follow the laws of gravity. They appear to be, if not extraterrestrial, at least coming into our atmosphere by some principle we don't understand, perhaps from another dimension.
You put all this together, you say that if we Earthlings could build things like that in the 40s and 50s, we would no longer be building F-16s, 17s, 18s, MiG-29s, Mirage 5s. Since we are still building those aircraft, what was observed back then wasn't built here. And if it wasn't built here, it was built someplace else. Therefore, by definition, it's extraterrestrial.
For a long time, from the 40s through the 60s at least, most of ufology, or the formal study of UFOs, tended to deal in these claims that objects were flying around. Since that time, and most especially now, in the 90s, the focus of attention has shifted to claims that human beings are encountering unusual beings of off-world origin or alien origin.
They were hairless. They didn't have slanted eyes. Their eyes were straight across. They were dark. They had not a real large nose, but it was more, it wasn't flat. And they had small nostrils, and they had very thin lips. But their mouths didn't open.
Eyewitness accounts began to accumulate of actual face-to-face encounters with something that would be in the category of 4 feet tall, grayish-green skin, enormous black slanted eyes, and, what the eyewitnesses say, are non-human entities.
Claims of conscious face-to-face encounters with extraterrestrials are not as common as the, quote, dream-like abduction experiences, which are happening worldwide.
Estimates range from hundreds of thousands to several million people in the United States have had these experiences. And around the world, although there are reports from many countries of this phenomenon, there are no reliable data.
So far as I can tell, I've never seen any absolute pattern that would suggest a type of person who has had abduction experiences. I've dealt with everything under the sun. I've dealt with, just in terms of professions, I had a NASA research scientist come to me as an abductee. I've had so far 8 psychiatrists come to me because of their abduction experiences. I've had police officers, military, people in show business, well-known people.
Cuts across economic groups, racial groups, there are blacks, Jews, Protestants, Catholics, you name it.
Black, white, old, young, rich, poor, straight, gay, every possible type you can imagine. And I've worked in places like Brazil, Australia, Europe, working with abductees there. So it's a global phenomenon.